Welcome to the Faith Talks Wood podcast. I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast that talks about everything from Jesus to joinery and a little bit of everything in between. Tom, I twisted my knee up. I bet you can't guess how I did it.
Let's see here. Probably something silly, either stepping on a toy, maybe on a wet floor or something like that.
Yeah, you're close. And I have to preface, I mean, I twisted enough that it just bothered me. It's not like I'm not disabled or nothing. But my son loves to play hide and go seek. And here's the thing. I like playing it, and I kind of pride myself in being a really good hider. And we don't have our house the way it's laid out. There's not many places to actually hide. Now he's 4.5, and so it's kind of easy to be in broad daylight and hide from him, right? If you know how to do it right. And so, but he plays fast-paced hide and seek, which means
3, 2, 1, go.
As soon as I find him, he starts counting, and I got to take off running to find a place to hide. I took off, and we have hardwood floors, and I kind of slipped around a corner and just tweaked my knee just enough, man, that it's been bothering me a little bit. But you know, I find it fun, the challenge of trying to hide it in plain sight. Like one of the hiding places I found that it took him a long time to find me, and after a minute, he'll get kind of like scared, right? Because if once he goes out of the room or wherever I'm at, I'll yell at Eli, and yell for him and stuff. And he's a horrible hider. I mean, he's just one of those that just laughs and giggles everywhere he hides, but it's fun. Well, One of my favorites is inside of our front door, we have like the entryway, and we've got like coat hooks where we hang, coats. We have a coat closet where we put most of the stuff. But I have I've got like Carhartt suspenders, like insulated suspenders for going outside and plowing and stuff. And I have them hanging on the hook, and it's in a corner beside the closet and where the entryway's at. And so all I did is I ran into that corner and I picked up you can't see it, but I picked up the suspenders and I like held my hand up and like I was a coat hook and hung them there in front of me. And if him and my daughter, if they didn't walk by me a dozen times looking for me, it was the best thing ever. I was so proud of that one. But yeah, I'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. I'll try to crawl underneath the crib, or I'll try to, do whatever. But yeah, twisted my knee up playing hide and seek. But hey, that's the good fun. That's the memories that he'll have. The funny part is though, right before we finish playing, we usually play after dinner, and then, it's time to start getting ready for bed, showers and stuff like that. I had we were doing like 2 more, hide and seeks, right? And so it was my turn to hide. And in our kitchen or in our living room, we have a big bay window where the Christmas tree's at. And then we have a chair that's, not like a recliner, it's just a normal chair that's beside it. And we have blankets that kind of lay over the chair. And I thought to myself, I said, if I can curl up on that chair and throw that blanket over me, he'll never see me. Because it's just like, to him, he's at that age where it's a chair with the blanket. I know that chair with the blanket, right? And so I knew that it would hide. And so, but the problem is that most of the time, my daughter, who's she's 19, 20 months, she will follow me wherever I go to hide. She wants to be right beside daddy. And so I have to try to run away from her to go hide, or otherwise she'll just point me right out to Eli. And so I get her in the back bedroom. My wife was folding clothes in our bedroom. And I get her in there, and she's getting pretty fast. And I set her in there, and I take off running to go hide. And I get on the chair, and I throw the blanket over me. And Eli had just finished counting. And then all of a sudden I feel a tap, tap on my leg, and my daughter lifts up the blanket and says, ha, 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 and just starts laughing at me. And I was like, oh, come on, man. But then she's funny too, because like I'll count and Eli will go hide, and she'll just tell me where he's at. She'd be like, daddy, brother, and she'll just point wherever he is. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, twisted my knee playing hide and seek because I tried to take off running too fast. And yeah, how's your week been?
Oh man, it's good. I miss those times when my daughter was young like that, when we used to play hide and go seek and everything else. But yeah, my daughter's not 3 anymore. She is 21, and on Friday she graduated from Colorado Mesa University. So for the last
That's awesome.
week, we have had family in here, and my mom stayed for about a week and a half, and then last today it's Tuesday. Last Wednesday, my brother and his wife got here. And then on Thursday, my wife's sister and her husband and her mom got here. So we had my mom had arrived the week before, and then we have friends from down the street and all come over. But man, we had somebody sleeping everywhere. And our, we only have a 1,500 square foot house, and 1,500 square foot is more than what me, my wife, and daughter need. Like, honestly,
Right.
like we lived in 1,000 square foot and we were perfectly fine. But when you start adding in 2 moms, and then my brother and his wife, and then my wife's sister and her husband, man, our little house starts to feel very crowded.
Oh yeah.
I was out in my office doing some paperwork and eating, and my wife came out and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Honestly, I'm just letting my brain rest." I said, because what happens is everybody, the excitement of being together and one person talking and then the next person talking, and all of a sudden everybody's talking over everybody, and the chaos just hurts my brain. I was like, I just needed a breather. I just needed a break. Yes, but it was fun though, man. It's just hard to believe that, because it seems like just yesterday I was playing hide and go seek with my daughter when she was 3,
Right.
and now she's graduated college, and it's just like, wow, how has the time flown by that much? But yeah, it was a good week though. So
Yeah. Hey, those times when you have bunch family over, one of my fondest, earliest memories is, so my mom's side of the family, they used to all live in the area. Well, for the most part, my grandma and grandpa, they're both now since passed. But when I was a kid in the early 90s, I remember we would go to my grandma's house for Christmas. And then, just like you said, we would sleep all over the place. There was like 6 of us sleep on the living room floor. Somebody was on the couch. And I just remember those times of just like sleeping. It was like, exhilarating as a little kid. And the funniest one was, long story short, I don't come from the best family. Well, my dad had been out of jail and stuff and whatever. But my uncle, my mom's brother-in-law, so my aunt's husband, was a police officer. And we were there for a few days around Christmas time, and middle of the night or super early in the morning, my uncle comes in with his big mag light and kicks the side of my dad, says, "Get up and get your hands behind your head," just to mess with him. And I remember that. I couldn't have been much older than what Eli is, right? Maybe 4 or 5 or something. And I remember that at the time I didn't know what was happening. As I'm older now, it's funny. But man, those times. And you talk about small houses. Our first house in Tennessee was about 1,500 square feet, a little bit smaller maybe. And it was perfect for my wife and I. And then we had a kid and toys and all the stuff, and we wanted to grow the family even more. And then our second house was pushing 3,000 square feet. And it was almost too much. Like, we just didn't know what to do with all the space. There was just like, it was just insane. But yeah, man, good stuff. So before we get into it, this is a little bit of a different episode. It is January 1st, is 2025, as you guys are listening to this. It's not quite that as we are recording it, but it's getting close. But just want to say thank you to all the patron supporters. You guys are awesome. You guys kill it over there. If you want to support us monetarily, you can do that at patreon.com/faithtalkwood. Appreciate all the prayers. This is a podcast that is a ministry, and we're going to talk about a little bit of that here today. And then if you are on Apple, give us a 5-star review, because as I'm looking at the stats right now, almost 85% of you guys listening are listening on an iPhone. And so Apple Podcast goes a long way. And finally, thank you to Surf Prep. Surf Prep is a partner of the podcast. They are awesome, and they are a company that have the morals that we have, and we align with them. And if you need any sandpaper or any sanders, any sanding systems, go to surfprep.com, use code FAITH, and you will get 10% off. So with that being said, so what we're going to do today, Tom brought this to me as an idea, and it was like, oh, this is really cool, is we're going to talk about kind of looking back at the past year of the podcast. And we're going to go through and we're going to kind of touch on each guest that we've had. There were 29 guests in 2024. We're going to talk a little bit about each one of them. But before we get into that, I just want to tell you guys something that's really crazy. Didn't really think about until we started talking as far as looking back. So this podcast started in 2023 with my buddy Patrick and I, and then Tom soon took over as a co-host when Patrick had to step back. In 2023, we had, and look, I'm going to tell you guys numbers, and the numbers aren't for us to like gloat and say, look at what we've done. This is all to the glory of God, because he has brought all of you guys that are listening here, and people have come back to the Lord and have reignited their faith because of a couple doofuses that like to talk about faith and woodworking, and glory to God for that. I mean, that is the big thing. But in 2023, we had 3,500 listens on the podcast. Now, I will say, in the podcasting world, that's actually not bad. That's pretty high up in the statistics, because most podcasts end after about 10 episodes. And so most podcasts don't last that long, because it's work. It's a lot of work and time and effort that has to go into it. So 3,500 listens in 2023. And we started February. I mean, we weren't right at the new year, but it might have been end of January. It was sometime around there. So it was pretty soon after the first of the year. Well, guys, y'all are crazy. And we have had almost 14,000 listens in 2024. Can you believe that, Tom? It's 14,000.
It is it's crazy. I mean, it really, I'm very thankful because of all the people that listen and the kind messages we get all the time of people thanking us for what we're doing and all. But the other statistic that amazed me, that, because I don't see all the back end stuff. So for you to listen, how we kind of do this podcast is, Will is obviously the IT guy. He's one with all the technical knowledge, and I'm just a guy that's been in the sign business for a long time and know a little bit about graphics. So Will does all the technical back end stuff, editing the audio, uploading it to Libsyn, getting it out to Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. When you see a guest and you see the graphic that's created, I do all the graphics for the different episodes and stuff. And anyway, it's my part, it takes advantage of the little bit of knowledge that I have, and Will's part takes advantage of his, but I never see the back end statistics. And one thing that you were telling me about, as I was amazed at all the different countries. I just kind of assumed. Now, I knew that we had one listener in Australia because I communicate with him pretty regularly on Instagram when I do get on there. But man, name off. Do you have that list still? You can name off all the countries.
I've got it up right here. So what I'm going to do, this goes in order of how many listens and whatnot. And so start at the top, obviously, is United States. I mean, we're based in the U.S. That just makes sense. The second is Australia. The third is Canada. Fourth is Sweden. And I'm just going to name down. It's crazy, guys, how many how many countries, people from different countries listen to this podcast. So we have US, Australia, Canada, Sweden, Spain, United Kingdom, Brazil, Norway, China, South Africa, Netherlands, Russia, Germany, Mexico, Ukraine, Italy, Romania, Chile, New Zealand, Belgium, Bangladesh, India, Argentina, France, Denmark, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, Austria, Japan, Malaysia, Trinidad, Switzerland, Lithuania, Uganda, Bonaire, I don't know what that is, Ghana, Bahamas, Hong Kong. I don't know why it says Hong Kong. And then, yeah, Lithuania, Switzerland. Holy moly. Like, I actually, that is funny as we were getting ready to record this podcast, I just logged into it, Libsyn, to look at the stuff. I see how many people listen, but I never look down at like the stats of where it's coming from. But I will say the impressive thing is like the main listener base, that you can tell that a lot of people are listening, is like US, Australia, Canada, Sweden, Spain, United Kingdom, Brazil, Norway. I mean, that's the big ones. That's insane to me. That many people around the world are listening to us. We're just a couple guys. I mean, I work in IT. Tom's a sign guy. We just love Jesus and love talking about woodworking and making and different things. And so, with that, we've had 29 guests on this year or 2024. And so what we're going to do is we just want to kind of give an homage to all the guests, and we're going to go down through and name the episode, and then who it was. And then Tom and I are just going to kind of name off a couple of our favorite things about that guest or about that podcast episode or whatnot. And let me preface just by saying it's a lot of guests, and we have a lot of we're on episode, this will be episode 91, I think. But it's a lot. And so actually more than that, because we do Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff. And so, we're up around 100 episodes of recordings that we've done. And so I'm not going to remember everything about everybody, but we just want to give an homage to all the guests on here. So Tom, you want to start us out with the first guest?
Yeah, man. So Everett Burge, episode 41, was the first guest of this year. Everett Burge from Wave After Wave Artworks. Now, Everett's kind of special to me because me and him have got to be good buddies, and we will either text or call one another almost on a weekly basis. I would say at least every other week he'll call me and say, "Tom, what are you up to, man?" And we just chit chat, and needless to say, him and Mark then spun off and started their Bible study on Thursday nights. But the thing that stood out about Everett, I've been a big admirer of his work for a long time, but in his testimony, he talked about his wife that went to either a nail salon or a hair salon. I can't remember which it was. And at the time, Everett was drinking, and his wife had had enough. And this lady that told her, "Don't give up, pray for him, and don't give up." And that's just something that we can all learn from. It's like to really encouraging other people in whatever they're going through in their walk. And needless to say, the end of that story is Everett quit drinking. He's got an awesome marriage with his wife. They got a kid now. He's got a great business. But somebody else saying, "Don't give up. Keep praying." And but yeah, I love Everett Burge, man. And Wave After Wave Artworks, if you want to go check out his work.
Yeah, man. One of the things about Everett I got to say is, his testimony was extremely powerful. I mean, it was just like, holy moly, God has really taken him. But the thing I remember about Everett is that one of the ministries that he's involved with is being on the beach.
Yep.
And they go down to the beach and they spread the gospel on the beach, and Wave After Wave kind of comes from that. And I think it comes from a Bible verse too. But yeah, just that they're on the beach, they're doing the thing, and it's raw, just real intense ministry that they're doing. And so love Everett, man. He's become a good friend as well. And yeah, really appreciate Everett. Episode 43 was Leah Parker from Parker Place Woodwork. Now, Leah's funny. We got to meet her at Workbench Con. But we had her on the podcast before that, and she kind of talked up Workbench Con, and she is just a ball of energy, man. Just bouncing around, always, always in a good mood, just kind of like whatever. But she is, I believe, one of the first people to take my wood finish and use it on Instagram and promote it. Yeah, she used it on her hand. That hand that she made, which I know you're going to kind of talk about, it has my finish on it. And I sent her more finish because she's making the other hand, and the same thing. But Leah loves people, loves the Word of God, and we're just so honored for her to be the first female guest on the podcast, and to be such a genuine soul.
Yeah, man. She is, like you said, a ball of energy, man. Like, she's just awesome, awesome wife, awesome mom, and awesome woodworker. And so the one thing I remember about her testimony was her and her sister either got saved at the same time or right around the same time. And her saying that her sister was bawling in tears and Leah was her typical self, all happy and joyful, which wouldn't surprise me because I don't think I could ever picture Leah not smiling. Like, she is just a happy-go-lucky person. But if you say the name Leah Parker to me or Parker Place Woodworks, I instantly think of that hand chair. That she is a phenomenal, just off-the-charts phenomenal artist. And how she comes up with the ideas of the things she makes is beyond me. But yeah, and the cool thing is, so if you go back and look at her channel, she built the left hand first. Right now, she is almost done with the right hand. And I think, I'm assuming it's probably going to that same coffee shop. But yeah, anyway, love that girl. And episode 45, Kyle Hayden of Hayden Custom Woodworks, man. So Kyle is back in North Carolina, near where I used to live. Ex-Air Force guy, just like me. But the thing that stood out to me about his testimony, if you remember him talking about him drinking, and when he decided to quit drinking, God told him to quit drinking, and right after that, he was able to get his new shop, and then his business took off. And he had said that God spoke to him. It was just waiting for him to quit to bless him. Like, he was blocking the blessing. And but the dude is an insanely good woodworker. He's one of those that's good with both power tools and finessing with hand tools, and he does some absolute beautiful work. But yeah, man, great guy, great episode.
Yeah, Kyle's testimony was powerful. You know, he had drinking issues and stuff, and he got into making stands for honey. Mm-hmm. Right? He makes those really, like, look, there ain't no honey ever sat on a stand that nice in its life. Like, he makes these gorgeous, like, it's like walnut and maple or something. These stands for this honey manufacturer in his area, and so. But Kyle is a genuine guy, loves the Lord, and yeah, loves seeing his stuff. Episode 48, Rob Ryan from Ginger Woodworks. Rob, man, he's a character. I loved having Rob on. He's done it all, from doing fine woodworking and lasers and CNCs. And he's on HGTV, he's a main guy on a big show. But he doesn't act like it, man. He is genuine, solid, down to earth dude. And he's not far from me. He's up in Buffalo, New York. I'm just down here in Erie, PA. So he's just about an hour and a half from me. And yeah, Rob is the real deal.
Yep. He's, if I had one word to describe him, I would say humility. And it was like you said, yeah, here's a dude that's on a TV show and has accomplished so much. And he is just down to earth. And like I messaged him a while back to ask him a question, and he was like, answer my question. He was like, "How you been doing, man?" And we chatted back and forth and told him about the Faith Talks Wood retreat we're having up there. He said, "Make sure you let me know the date. I'll be there if the TV show doesn't contradict." So look forward to seeing him there. Episode 50, Nolan Thompson of Nolan Built. So Nolan's another one we got to meet at Workbench Con, and we already had him scheduled for the podcast before we went, but getting to meet him in person. And I remember him telling us that he worked at like a pier, like something to do with like shipping or the dock
He
station.
was a pipe fitter.
Or
He was a
something.
pipe fitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was doing the woodworking on the side, and he took this bold leap of faith to go full-time woodworking. And it just to give up that big high-paying union job and to step into what God has for you is just a bold step of faith. And the dude has got a big CNC in his shop. The most impressive thing, I know this sounds weird that he's got that monster CNC, but it's his paint booth. If you ever, the dude has got the setup in his shop, man. Every which way you can think of to spray is phenomenal. But yeah, phenomenal cabinet builder and just an awesome, genuine dude. And the thing I love about his social media, every day he posts a Bible verse, the passage that he's reading on his Instagram. And he said that he does that to be accountable to himself. He said, because I know if people are expecting me to post that, I got to go read it first. And it keeps him on track. He's just so dedicated to his faith.
Yeah. Nolan loved the Word of God. And the one thing I love about him is that he's real. Like, I remember him saying stuff like, "Man, my shop is a mess, but it's a working shop, and he works in it, and he doesn't try to like live up to something he's not." And he's a phenomenal cabinet maker and woodworker, and will make tables. I don't know how. I think he told me. I think when we asked him on the podcast, I said, "Dude, how are you moving that table?" Because at the time we recorded that episode, he was doing like this crazy 11-foot table or something. He said, "Bro, physics." Right. And I, man, love Nolan. Awesome dude. Episode 52, Jason McFarland Custom. So Jason, interestingly enough, he is best friends with, Patrick, who started the podcast with me. And that's how I got to know Jason. And the first time I met Jason, I'm like, "Oh, this is my dude." He is one of the funniest, just like witty kind of guys that's out there, and heart of gold for people, and loves his family. And he is one of those guys that just does whatever he puts his mind to. He's making like mounts for guns now, and he has I think an Avid big 8x10 C or 4x10 CNC and 5x10 or whatever it is, and does custom cabinetry, and just a phenomenal guy who is genuine family man living down in the heart of Georgia. So
Yep. Yeah, man, he is like you said, he's kind of like Leah Parker. Like I don't think I've ever seen him when he wasn't smiling. But and of course just had the baby and growing family, but the dude is just heart of gold, man. And I love how he was talking about the growth of his business, how he's like, "We just happened to go in the gun shop that day." And then I'm like, I can make a holder better than that. And now dude's all over the place. But yeah, cool guy, man. Episode 54, Chris Duncan. All right, this is Chris Duncan from Dunk Woods, and we also got to meet him at Workbench Con, and this dude is so funny. I love his reels. But the thing that stood out to me about his testimony, I don't know if you remember this part or not, but his wife and him, she basically told him, said, I'm following Jesus and I want a man that's going to follow Jesus. Either you're coming along or we're out. And so she basically said, this is the life I'm going to live. And if you want to be my husband, then they weren't married at the time, and you're going to come to church. And after that, needless to say, went to church, got saved, and the dude is on fire for the Lord. And but he makes phenomenal. He's a phenomenal woodworker, but his reels, he puts so much humor into them. If you're not following, definitely go follow him because he will keep you laughing.
Yeah, his reels are hilarious, and I remember his episode. Like he's a family man, legit, and you could hear his kids in the background during the podcast and stuff, and that's just what it was to him, man. That's his life. He loves his family, and yeah, absolutely love Chris, man. He's a cool guy. Episode 56. Andy Bird. Andy, I remember, I think on that episode, him and I got in tangents about some theology stuff or something. And that's when I was like, okay, this guy's legit. He's real. And we really hit it off as far as, you know, the podcast and everything. But he's involved. Like that dude's involved in church, involved in leadership, involved in all kinds of stuff. And he is the CNC master. I mean, he has a whole course on CNCs. He is extremely knowledgeable in that stuff and business sense, and absolutely love me some Andy Bird.
Yeah, man. And he's such a genuine, humble dude. Like he had just hit 100,000 subscribers, I think, right before we had him on. And same thing, man. He came on and it was just like we knew him forever. It was just so laid back and I absolutely loved him. One thing that I remember about Andy, I've been watching his channel for years, and is he did a video where he cut his finger on his table saw, but he didn't hide about it. He used it as a teaching opportunity to help others. He absorbed the criticism of all the people saying, you dummy, you did this wrong, did that. He knew what he did wrong. And, but he still went through it and shared it to try to help other people. But, yeah, man, he is a CNC master, but that one video just always stands out to me, man. Episode number 58, Cody Elkins. So, like you and I had said, we met several people that stood out, and Cody was one of the ones that at Workbench Con we got to be good buddies with. And Cody's from Cadent Manufacturing, the maker of the Jenny Bit. And same thing when he gave up alcohol. You remember him talking about his testimony, how God said he was waiting on a blessing, and when he gave that up. And needless to say, they got a house that fit their family. Now, I forget how many kids Cody's up to now, because they just had another one.
Like 72 or something.
He's got a whole
it's four or five or something, I believe. I can't remember.
A whole herd of them. But yeah, man, just love this dude. Like
and they're all girls.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I got to go down to his shop and hang out. He just welcomed me in, and we made a CNC bit, let me operate the machine and everything. And he let another one of our listeners come down and do the same. And this dude is literally like, if I were to say a walking example of Jesus here on earth that I met, it would be Cody Elkins. Like, he is the real deal, man. He loves the Lord and he loves people. And that's what the word tells us to do, is to go love people. And that's Cody, man.
Yeah. One of the things about his testimony is he almost died, has a rare, I think it was a heart disease, and really had to kind of change his lifestyle, couldn't play the sports and do all the stuff. But one of the things about Cody, you know, we we met him at Workbench Con, and then he had with him a suitcase full of Jenny bits, and he was fulfilling orders for his business while at Workbench Con. And then him and I grabbed an Uber because we had a flight around the same time to leave, and we were in the same concourse. And we went and had breakfast because our flight, like, we left the hotel at like 4:30 in the morning, and our flights didn't go till like 7 or something. And we stood in line together and talked and ate breakfast at the airport together. And man, just genuine, cares about you as a person. And he is the most knowledgeable person on bit manufacturing. I remember standing in a circle with a bunch of guys, and he hands a bit to, I think it was John Malecki or somebody at Workbench Con. And John's like, how's this bit different? And Cody explains that, was it John or
no,
who?
it was Brad from Fix This, Build That. I remember the conversation.
Okay, yep.
And Brad just stood there listening to him. Like, okay.
Yep,
dude knows his stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cody, I love all the guests. Cody's one of my favorite people. We've gotten to connect. We text and we talk, and yeah, he's the real deal. He's the real deal. Episode 59, Michael Oliver, 10,000 makes. He just got a bandsaw. Was it him?
Yep.
On Instagram, just got a really nice Harvey bandsaw. Michael is a cool dude. He's just like one of those guys that it's like, I just want to hang around him. He's just like super chill, like family man, he's just a super cool guy. And he's 10,000, Minnesota. He's from Minnesota. I was trying to remember 10,000 lakes, 10,000 makes. Yep. Minnesota. Just a all around good guy that loves the Lord. And one of the things, I'll go on a quick tangent. We on the podcast will jump on a Google Meet call with people, and then we'll chat for a bit, tell them about the podcast and whatnot. And then usually by the time the podcast recording is over, we still have a lot of stuff that we want to talk about. And so Tom and I will a lot of times stay on the call afterwards, after the recording, and just talk life and, get raw and real and stuff. And Michael is one of the guys that I remember staying on the call with for a while after, just to talk about some church stuff and church hurt and different things that he had been through that I'd been through. Michael is the real deal.
Yep. Man, me and Michael have gotten to be good friends and kind of prayer warriors for each other. And when we need somebody to pray for us, we'll text each other. And he is just an awesome, genuine dude. But there's two things that really stood out to me about him. Ironically, he gave up drinking as well. But when he did it, he said something. And it said he wasn't giving up drinking because drinking is wrong, because clearly in the Bible it says we can drink. But he asked himself, am I a better Michael when I'm drinking? And he said the answer was no. And so he said, I want to be the best version of me. And I think I'm better without it. The second thing is he lost his job and had to take a huge pay cut, and having the faith through that, praying for another job and everything is just really stood out. But he's an awesome dude. But he honestly, like when I watch his YouTube videos and reels and stuff, I feel like I'm watching like somebody that should be on HGTV. Like the dude has a camera presence that's just absolutely amazing. But episode 60, Julie Bro. So Julie is here in Colorado on the eastern slope. She is Mod Stick Designs, and she makes some absolutely gorgeous mountain artwork. And Julie, if you remember, she had a medical issue with her female organs that caused her a lot of pain and I think problems with giving birth and that type stuff. but then praying through it and her testimony about overcoming it, and now being back snowboarding, having her business. She plays music in her church on the praise and worship team. And she is just a genuine. I've talked to her on the phone. We were going to do a maker collab challenge together, and then it didn't work out. But I've been planning to go to one of the craft festivals and see her work in person when we go to visit my wife's sister, but I haven't been able to time it correctly yet. But just an amazing young lady.
Yeah, Julie has been through some stuff. Her testimony, some of the stuff that she's experienced, powerful. And to see, you could tell that she has rediscovered her smile.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. That's the best way I could put it. Like, she's rediscovered life in a manner of following the Lord and trusting in Him, and you can see it. I mean, yeah, awesome lady that just loves the Lord and loves her daughters and wants to do all she can for them, and really, really happy for where she's at and how she's gotten through all the stuff she's been through. Now, keeping on with the female guest, episode 61, Deandra Howard, work boots and glasses. Dare I say, she is the most high energy guest we've ever had.
Yes.
Leah's super high energy. I think Deandra pops that. She is the most bubbly, just positive, amazing individual. And glasses. Like, she wears all these different glasses, man. Work boots and glasses. And I remember she had taken a leap of faith to go into a commercial space. And then she talked about on the podcast that she was looking at starting to do like some mentorship to where she has young ladies come in, and she's doing that.
Oh, dude.
If you on Instagram, she is doing it. And she's one of those, she says she's going to do it. She's going to put her mind to it. She's going to figure it out. And her testimony and the power of what God has brought her through and where she's at, man, so good.
Yes. And we met her at Workbench Con as well. Chris Duncan is the one that introduced us and said, you need to get her on the podcast. And so Deandra is probably the only person we've had on the podcast that I'm taller than, because I'm very short. And Deandra, she is a little bitty ball of fire and on fire for the Lord. Every day she puts a Bible verse on Instagram. And like you said, she said that her dream was to teach. And buddy, she has been teaching classes right and left in that space. But man, what an awesome individual. Episode 62, Austin Vanderveer, Heritage Woodwork USA. And Austin lives over there in the upper northwest Arkansas area. And dude is, the thing I remember about him is that, his work in his church and him leading the men's group there. But when he started his business, he started, if I remember correctly, back around the pandemic time. And it was like, well, I'm out of a job. I got to do something. And he started woodworking. And I remember him saying there were times where his bank account was bone dry and they weren't going to have enough to pay the bills. But God has just provided enough work all along the way. And he kept his faith and kept on to what God told him to do. And you're talking about a phenomenal woodworker, both with power tools and hand tools. The dude is just a craftsman, man.
Absolutely. He is another level. And he, one of the things I remember is he's an elder in his church.
Yeah.
And he's not an older dude. He's probably around my age, probably in his mid-30s. And solid, firm foundation kind of guy. Absolutely loves the Lord, loves the church, and is on fire, and is one of the best woodworkers. I mean, he's just insane. Episode 64, another Workbench Con meetup. Andrew, he's like what, 14? No. Love you, Andrew, if you're listening. No, he's a young kid. And we met up with him at Workbench Con. We actually went to dinner with him. We took him out to dinner, and hung out with him, and phenomenal kid, comes from a solid family, loves the Lord. And he's one of those, like, he got a little lathe and started making pens and started making reels and went viral. I mean, he's got reels with like 40 plus million views and stuff off of, turning pens on Instagram, but that doesn't get to him. He started another channel called Teen Woodworkers, a platform for teens to share their work. And he is just solid as they come, focused. He's young, but he's got wisdom for his age. Is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have said. And we already had him scheduled on the podcast before we went to Workbench Con, and then met him there. And I want to say, I think he's like 18 years old, maybe 19, something like that. But he knows Austin. He goes over to Austin's shop and gets Austin scraps and stuff and makes them a pen. And I think he also knows Matt from 731 Woodwork. They all kind of live
Arkansas.
up in that region together. But he is a phenomenal woodworker for such a young man and on fire for the Lord. Meeting him and other young people like him gives me hope for the future of America.
Absolutely.
I mean, so when you start getting down on all the young people out there and all the crazy things to do, remember we got people like Andrew, and he's at Andrew B. Woodworking. So, man, episode 68. I'm going to have to tell you this. Man, I always say this every episode we have. After we hang up, we always go, man, that was one of my favorites. But Psalm 139 Woodworks, Jordan Reese. And dude has been through some stuff. And so if you remember, Jordan has, I believe it's called Tourette syndrome, which is where he has like a muscle twitch in like his neck and face and stuff. It affects his speech. And if you go back and listen to the episode, you'll be able to hear kind of a hiccup sound every so often. And so, but he's a fine woodworker. Like, dude, you watch him work with chisels and stuff. Yep. And I'm like, how do you do that when your body's constantly twitching? And he was like, it helps me to focus. And somehow I've learned over the years to be able to do it. And dude, he's another one like Austin that's a fine craftsman. His shop got totally flooded. He's down in Florida. Yep. He's overcome Tourette's and just, man, awesome, genuine dude. And I still communicate with him on Instagram occasionally, and just so much admiration for somebody. I think so often in America, we like to take things like what he's dealing with Tourette's and call them a disability. And I love it when I see somebody like him that says, what are you talking about? No, here's my ability. Let me show you what I can do. And I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm going to let it go glorify God. And he uses that to bring glory to God. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And another thing about Jordan is he was a professional golfer. I think he was wasn't on the majors, but he was up and coming. And, he, with Tourette syndrome, again, he talked about how he's able to focus in those moments when you're swinging the club or whatever that might be. And he, man, so genuine, loved having him on. And even with, what the stuff that he's been through, he's still just on fire and part of a church plant. And he was like super excited about it and talking about the growth they're having and just loved his local body of believers. And so love Jordan. Episode 69. This is actually the second time we had this guest on. This is Drew Fisher Shop. Funny story about Drew. I, on a whim, when Patrick and I decided to start the podcast, I sent Drew an Instagram message. And I just said, hey, this is who I am. You don't know me from Adam. But here's what we're looking to do. We want to start a podcast about our faith in Jesus and woodworking. And I was just curious if you had any tips or any advice on starting a podcast, because he has
We built a thing.
We Built a Thing podcast, and wildly successful podcast in the maker space. And I sent him that message. And if he didn't message me back with his cell phone number and say, call me, and him and I talked for like an hour on the phone, and he just got to know each other. And he told me about the podcast and, some things to do right away, some lessons learned they should have done earlier on. And really, really was instrumental in helping us get the podcast off the ground and get moving with it. And if he's not one of the most funny, witty guys, his videos are, and he is incredibly talented in the shop. I mean, he makes some incredible things in his little basement shop. And one of my favorite people, we text often now. And he just one of those guys that, yeah, he may have this big following on YouTube and such, but he doesn't let that get to him. And he is just a straight shooter, down to earth guy. And we had him back on the podcast this episode, and he talked about when he got hacked, his computer got hacked, and being an IT manager, I talked through it with it, and we talked about some of that stuff, and but just leaned on the Lord in that time, and thought, okay, God, if this is what you want my YouTube channel to be gone, then here we go. We're going to go down a different path, and I'm going to follow you. And love Drew Fisher, one of my good buddies, and really admire who he is in the space that he's in.
Yeah. And like you said, this was second time, and the reason we had him back on. And if you want to hear his testimony, just go back into the 2023 episodes, and he was on as one of our first few guests and shared his testimony then. But this was about, like you said, him getting hacked. And the reason that we had him back on is because we thought it'd be a valuable lesson. But he said one thing that just I thought was so powerful. So what happened is he lost his YouTube channel. And so he's a full-time YouTuber. That is his income. The guy took over basically all of his social media somehow. And he was able to, in the moment, even though he was frustrated, he was like, okay, God, well, maybe you've got something else for me. And if you have something else for me that you want me to do other than YouTube, then don't let me get it back. Take it all. I want to do whatever you want me to do. If you want me to continue on this path, then make this miracle happen and recover. And to me, that is the step of a true faith, when you're willing to say, I'm willing to give it all up for you, Lord. And Drew is just such a humble man of character. Love him. Episode 70, another female guest. This one a little older, Cy Marshall of Cy's Corner. So Cy, she's another one that's a ball of energy. Like, if you ever watch her videos, like, she is just a spitfire, but she is a phenomenal scroll saw artist. And that's how I got to originally following her. But a strong woman of faith. And she talked about how much she liked spending time in the Word. And that was what's so powerful. But yeah, man, awesome episode.
Yeah. Other thing about Cy, I believe she's a retired dentist. Yep. Yeah. She's a retired doctor, step back from that and started doing shop stuff. And I think she said that her and her husband like finding antiques or something, or
Yep.
I remember something about that from that episode. But yeah, Cy, awesome lady. She was really cool to talk to. And yeah, it was a ball of energy, like you said. So episode 72, Tim Bowie. Tim's Hobby Shop. Man, I love Tim. He is my reformed brother from another mother. And I don't even consider myself reformed as far as my theology is concerned, but a solid guy who he's been around. I mean, he's worked some jobs. He's been in some really cool industries and done a lot of cool things. And yeah, his content is funny because it's just like, this is what it is. Like, he'll be spraying a thing in his garage and he'll build a Dexter lab, and he'll spray out something in his shop. And yeah, and I think I remember him talking about that he got his daughter to kind of help him get some of the social media stuff going. So yeah, Tim, love Tim.
Yep. Me and Tim talked several times, and ironically, Tim reached out to me. So he has, I forget, what was it, his daughter that's living in Arizona in Tempe, or his mom? I can't remember which relative he was visiting down in Tempe, which is where Cody's located. And he reached out to me. He said, could you possibly connect me with Cody? And I'd love to go see his shop. And I connected the two, and Cody invited him on in, and he went over there and made a bit and hung out with Cody and well. And I think that's so cool how different people in our community have been able to connect through the podcast. And but yes, speaking of his daughter, I forget the name of her channel, but one of his daughters has a baking channel. She makes all this homemade bread and baked goods. And next time I go to Oregon to see my wife's sister, I'm going to get some of that homemade bread, man. It looks really good. Episode 74, Drew Achong from Sola Gratia Woodwork. Man, Drew, if you've ever looked at he makes some of the most beautiful wooden crosses. But I remember in his testimony, he talked about moving from place to place. I want to say it was like either Arizona or New Mexico, all the way to like Georgia or Florida, somewhere on the East Coast, back to somewhere out west, and then on into, is it Oklahoma or Kansas? But all these different places where God kept shutting the door, and he was like, okay, what do you want me to do now? And in faith followed to all these different places for ministry. He worked in different parts of ministry, and now has an amazing wood shop. And I believe he's in Kansas now, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, but
yep.
Really, really enjoyed having him on, man. And it's such a powerful story to be obedient, to pack up everything you have and move cross country because God says this is where I want you to go. I'm like, I have so much admiration for people in the ministry that can do that. So.
Yeah, Drew is a fun guy. We enjoyed having him on, and yeah, he had moved around for the ministry. I think he's Presbyterian. That could be wrong. Yeah, could be wrong. But part of they would get moved around for the ministry roles and stuff. And yeah, solid guy. Also a guy that's in IT. I remember he works for his county where he lives at, and he's in the IT department there. And so, and I hired a guy that used to work in the county IT. So I think we kind of connected on that and some of the internal funny joke things of like county IT. But Drew, yeah, loved having Drew on. Episode 75, Skylar, how do you say your last name? Fiara?
I think it's Faria or I don't know. Skylar from Surf Prep Sanding.
Yeah, Skylar, the founder of Surf Prep Sanding. He, holy moly, was he not just so genuine and raw? And he came on the podcast and poured out his life story and his testimony and how God's worked through it. And now one of his big missions, one of the things I left with it really got, I know Tom and I both were like, we need to get them as sponsors of the podcast, which they are, is his commitment to men.
Yep.
To getting men on the right path for the Lord, and the investment that he makes in his company and the people that work for him is insane. And one of the things I remember sitting in the class at Workbench Con where him and Hannah did a demonstration about sandpaper and sanders and stuff is his knowledge of sandpaper.
Yes.
The man knows more about sandpaper than I'll ever even think about forgetting. Like, holy moly. Yeah, it's insane and so knowledgeable, such a loving guy that has just trusted the Lord with everything, has put it all out there, and the Lord has blessed him and is continuing to do so.
Yeah, man. We were able to meet Skylar and Hannah at Workbench Con, and like they are just so down to earth people. But the one thing there's several things that stood out about Skylar's testimony that I can't unforget. I just think about them every time I pick up a piece of sandpaper. But Skylar said that his mission was to build good humans. His focus is people, people, people. And that just stood out to me so much. And, of course, he was a professional baseball player, on that path, and then got the injury, ended up back home, and his whole got into selling sandpaper because of the bats at the Louisville Slugger place that makes the bats. And then remember when he talked about how they purchased the sanding company from that lady? Her husband had passed away. She was grieving. She didn't want anything else to do with the company, and called him and said, I'm selling. And he tried to talk her out of selling it. And she said, I'm going to sell. You're the first one on the list. If you don't want it, let me know. I'm going to the next one on the list, but I'm going to sell. And so she sold it to him at a steal. And then a year later, when she kind of came to her senses, went back to him and said, I'd like to buy the business back. And he said, I'm not interested in selling it. And then she's basically said, I was in grieving at the time and I sold it to you way too cheap. And he said, I agree, you did. Tell me what your evaluation of it should have been. And she told him, and he said, that's exactly what I thought it should have been as well. I'll pay you the difference. And he paid her every penny. I'm not going to say there's not another American out there that would do it, but I'm going to tell you, you'd be hard pressed to find another person that would go back and not say, hey, a deal's a deal, to go back after the fact. But that just shows the character of them. And that is stuff like that, his commitment to building good humans, their integrity, and obviously the knowledge of the sandpaper. But the sandpaper is not why we wanted them to partner with us. It's their character. And just one of the finest human beings I've ever met. Episode 76, Adam Yarian, Adam Woodwork. So kind of like Leah Parker, if you say her name, I instantly think of a wooden hand chair. You say Adam's name, I instantly think of the chair that's the icon of his social media. Dude is an insane craftsman. And he's actually originally from here in Colorado, went into ministry and ended up there in Chicago and started doing this because they're in ministry. They can't afford to buy furniture, had to make some. And, but still in full-time ministry. Woodworking is something he does for enjoyment on the side. And just one insanely powerful testimony, and shared with us his struggles of where he was on that parking deck in Colorado saying, what's the purpose in life? And then God spoke to him, and then now he's in ministry. But man, what an awesome dude, man. I hope that one day when he comes back to Colorado to visit family, I'll get to meet him in person.
Yeah, he's part of YWAM, Youth on a Mission. Him and his wife are full time in that, and yeah, his discernment for they were in the middle of sabbatical when we had him on, and they may be the rest of this year. I can't remember, or I guess last year if you listen to this, January 1. Solid guy. I've chatted back and forth with him, and he's actually reached out to my wife to do some stained glass. He wants to integrate stained glass into a panel of like a thing he's making, and he's asked my wife if she could. It's a pretty cool idea. So yeah, Adam, love Adam, great guy, great heart, and just appreciate his commitment to the ministry and what him and his wife are doing. Episode 78 is We Win for Alabama Woodworker. We is kind of funny in a good way. He is the first guest that we've ever asked to come on who interviewed us before we recorded. One of the things when I'd reached out to him and he says, "Hey, I don't get on Instagram much. Send me an email. We'll chat that way." And he asked me like, "Hey, you guys say you're a faith-based podcast. What faith are you talking about? What's your beliefs?" And he was like serious about like, I want to make sure that I'm not getting on a podcast that believes in something different than what I do. And so I gave him the rundown of the majors and minors and stuff. And he's like, "Okay, yeah, you're on the same page as me. I just want to make sure." And he came on the podcast, and dude is a rocket scientist, and has an incredible ability to make the most fine furniture you could ever imagine. And yeah, and his love for the Lord, I mean, is legit. Him and his wife are involved in their church, and he's taken a step back on some of the stuff just to focus on family and you know, get out of the hustle and bustle and stuff. And him, one of the things I remember about his episode is him and his wife, their like passion is dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Ballroom dancing, and him and his wife, I think, would compete in ballroom dancing, like legit. You know, I thought that's so cool that they connect in that way. And his wife still does dance lessons, and they lead Bible studies and stuff. And we loved his heart and his discernment to question us on who we are and what it is that we believe before he come on the podcast. So that was really cool.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, We Win, the Alabama Woodworker on YouTube, but also him and Guy and the other gentleman have Woodshop Life podcast. And I have been a listener of their podcast since they were, I want to say around episode 40 or so, and they've been around much longer. But I listen. It's a bi-weekly podcast about woodworking, and it is fantastic. You will get repeat questions because people call in, ask a question that hasn't listened to a past podcast. But the thing I liked about it that we told us what they try to do, since they get repeat questions, is if you listen to them, you'll see this. They don't just answer the question. They explain a scenario where that question has impacted something in their shop. So an application process of how they have encountered that same situation. And absolutely phenomenal dude that's on fire for the Lord. And I highly recommend you go check out his podcast as well. Episode 80, Andy Rawls. And I know that this is probably one of your favorites because you had been watching, like I've watched Drew Fisher and Bob Claggett, probably two of the longest that I've watched on YouTube. But I think you said this is one of the oldest. Now, Andy Rawls is one of those guys. He's kind of like Heritage. I would say him and Heritage Austin would really get along, and same thing with Adam or Jordan Reese. Those dudes would hang out in a shop and have some fun together because they are hand tool masters along with power tools. But dude has a phenomenal shop. But the thing that stood out to me about his testimony, remember when he told us how he had gone on this mission trip down to like, let's say it was Mexico somewhere, and one of the people were inappropriate, and he's like, "I'm out of here," and got in a car and a taxi and 4 hours to the airport and back, and it did not stump his faith. It made his faith stronger. And the dude is on fire for the Lord, has a men's group Bible study in his wood shop every week. And just that is one thing. One day I'm going to go to the Texas Woodworking Festival, and I'm going to go to Andy's shop and get to meet him in person. That is on my bucket list.
Absolutely. Yeah. Andy, he's the first woodworker I found on YouTube years and years and years ago. And I remember the first time he had mentioned in passing about something about his faith or something. And I was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. He's a Christian. And so I've had, I actually reached out to him like 2 or 3 times. He never responded to the Instagram, and he doesn't really get on there, or he doesn't look at that stuff and whatnot. And I got on his website and I sent him an inquiry as if I was going to order a piece of furniture to get him to respond. And yeah, awesome guy, so genuine. He has a extremely powerful testimony, what he went through in Mexico and ups and downs that he's been through, and where he's at now. And I would argue, and I don't say this to like, I wouldn't fight somebody over it, but he's probably one of the most talented woodworkers on the social media world. Just somebody that he builds things that are generational. And I mean, he charges for it. I mean, if you want a coffee table from Andy, you're paying, seven figures, or not seven, or was that 5 figures? Sorry, 5 figures for a table, right? I mean, it's just insane. And love Andy, amazing woodworker, and just heart of gold for the Lord. Episode 81, Chris Burton, a glimpse inside. Man, Chris, probably one of the funniest guys we've ever had on the podcast. He's just so quick, and like his sense of humor. There were times I had to mute the mic because I was laughing so hard about some of the stuff he was saying, and just like awesome guy. A bit of a different approach to faith and such. His wife has an autoimmune disease, and they have to kind of stay inside and kind of keep away from people. And so but his heart for people, he loves people, and he loves sharing the fun things that he's making with people, and likes to solve problems. And yeah, love Chris, such genuine guy, legit OG in the space, and as solid as they come.
Yeah, man. Ironically, he's one of the ones that I watched him when he was pouring the concrete, or back when the concrete was getting poured for his current shop, like years ago. I can't remember how long ago. And we got to meet him at Workbench Con. And the one thing about it is, like, I walked up to him and said, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you, I love your channel, man. You do a great job." And he was like, "Hey, man, I'm Chris. I know you're Chris. I watch your channel," but then asked me about me. We stood there and talked, and several times over the course of the weekend, he just hung out and treated us like real dudes. And I have so much respect for him because, like you were saying, his wife has that autoimmune disease. And I hate to say it, but there's a lot of men that would go their own path because of the predicament. And his wife has to sleep a lot. And if you go back and listen to testimony, he talks about it all. So he has a very different life than what a lot of us have with our wives being healthy. But the dude loves his wife, loves his kids, loves his business, and loves other people, and he'll help anybody out. Like, he is just a genuine dude. And that's one person. Like, if I still lived on the East Coast, I'd be going down there and hang out with Chris. Like, he is just a cool dude, man. Episode 82, Bob Clagett of I Like to Make Stuff. So it would be hard for me to tell you whether Drew Fisher or Bob Clagett was the first one I watched on YouTube, but like, I have been watching his channel forever, like a long, long time. And I joked with him when he was on here back in the day. He used to do woodworking. He still is a phenomenal woodworker, but now he has 3D printers and all kind of other stuff. And so you see a lot of that on this channel, but this dude has 3.5 million subscribers on YouTube. He has a very busy life between serving his church on his worship team and coaching kids soccer and everything else. And for him to take time out of his schedule to come on here really meant a lot. But the thing that stood out to me about Bob's testimony was he talked about when he had gotten church hurt and went to college and walking around the info tables, and there was a guy there from a local church, and I want to say he said he had dreadlocks. I can't remember, or maybe
Afro.
a big afro. And the guy and Bob kind of blew him off like he didn't know, wasn't interested in the church. And the guy stands up and says, "Hello, my name is," and put his hand out. That guy ended up being his best man in his wedding. And that is so powerful of a testimony, and it shows us how much just a simple hello and a handshake, standing some up and looking somebody in the eye and say, "I care about you, and I want to know more about you." And needless to say, we if you listen to the rest of it, how much of an impact that had on the rest of his life. And but Bob's just like that, man. He is just down to earth. After we finished recording, we must have stayed on and talked to him for another hour. Just a laid back, humble dude, man. And I love his channel. He's so, to me, him and Drew Fisher are two of, and Drew Witt, I would say they're three of the most creative at making YouTube videos. They keep you so engaged. And, but yeah, man, that was a big excitement. It's kind of like a kid going to get meet, their favorite baseball player or football player. That was kind of like that episode for me, getting to, meet Bob through video chat. But
Yeah, Bob. So I have to, full transparency here. I didn't watch any of his stuff until, like, I knew who he was, but because of the algorithm and because I never like watched much 3D printing stuff and never really got into that stuff, his videos were never something that was served to me on the algorithm. And so it wasn't until we booked him, I started looking him up, and now I watch every one of his videos. He is extremely engaging, one of the most creative people, and his channel is problem solving. He has some problem at his house, in his shop, something, and he's like, "I think there's a better way to do this. I think there's an easier way to fix it. I think there's a problem to be solved here." And his approach to video filmmaking and his ability to keep you engaged, but his love for the Lord and his genuineness, like, he's just a dude. And even though he has this YouTube fame, if you will, or whatever, that he could lose it tomorrow and it wouldn't matter to him. Like, I just absolutely love Bob. Hands down, one of the coolest guys. Phenomenal.
And the other thing about, they have a podcast, Making It, which he does with Jimmy DiResta, and forgive me for drawing a blank. The third guy that
I don't remember his name.
he has the Making It channel. I'm just drawing a blank on his name, but you know, him and Drew Fisher both have. Drew mentioned our podcast in one of his videos, and then Bob also mentioned our podcast on their podcast, and their podcast is humongous. Like we're just like a little speckle pea in the Maker podcast community compared to them. I mean, him and Jimmy DiResta are just alike, because I met Jimmy DiResta at Workbench Con, and he would just stood there and talk to me forever. Like, dude, I'm just another dude that's got a shop that happened to get on TV and people know about me, but
Right.
I like to make stuff, you know. So
Awesome. Episode 83, Skyland Johnson. Skyland, one of the most genuine guys, and he's a listener to the podcast, and you're going to hear this. Skyland, he was a little nervous to come on the podcast, and to be fair, people that aren't on social media and stuff, we've had a couple people that are a little bit nervous to come on the podcast, and but man, such a cool, genuine guy who is a hardworking, loves the Lord, serious about his faith, and committed to serving the Lord. Just an awesome, awesome kid. Absolutely excited that we were able to have him on the podcast and that he was able to share his story and his testimony.
Yeah, man. So there's three things about Skyland. One that I will. It's kind of like Leah. I instantly think about the wooden hand chair. With Skyland, it's gospel music and NASCAR. Boy, loves him some Southern gospel music. And, I grew up listening to stuff like the Gatlin Brothers and things like that, the Gaither Brother Band and all. And so I've listened to a lot of this. I'm old, man. Dude, I saw them people before he was ever born. I'm old enough I could be his dad, and it's cool to see a young person that appreciates that good old Southern gospel music, man. But awesome dude. And the other thing cool about, he actually works for Bloom Slides. He makes these wonderful slides that we all dream about putting in our cabinet. So cool dude. I love him, man. And I communicate with him like pretty regularly. He'll shoot me a text and say, hey man, how you doing? What you working on type stuff, or he's working on something and might ask me a question. But awesome dude, man. Episode 85, Mark Morgan of MM Workhouse. So Mark has gotten to be one of my good buddies. The same thing, we text. Mark's off work on Fridays, and so quite often on Friday he'll call me and see what I'm up to in the shop. But him and Everett connected because he reached out after Everett's episode and said, man, your testimony really touched me, and they got to be good buddies. And of course started the Bible study on Thursday nights, Sawdust sessions. And but this dude, there's a verse in 1 Samuel 15 that says, what's more important, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to my voice? And it says, listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than the offering. That verse reminds me of Mark Morgan. So, him and his wife were obedient. He talks about it in his testimony. He didn't want to be a foster parent, but then God was telling it to him. And, for him to go at his age, because Mark's actually 1 year younger than me, to go and foster two young girls, and just an amazing dude that is obedient to whatever God tells him to do. And I remember there were several things in his testimony where he was like, God, I don't want to do that. But then he did it, and just awesome, man. Love him.
Yeah, I love Mark. One of the things about him is he's not far from me either. He's probably 2 hours away from me or so. Not too far. And we've connected and we text back and forth quite often, and just a solid guy, phenomenal woodworker. He works in a custom cabinet shop, but he's the custom woodworker. So they need a desk built. Mark builds the desk. I mean, and he is just incredibly talented, and his transformation on how the Lord has turned him 180 is incredible. And his testimony is so powerful. His obedience to what God is doing in his life. Love Mark Morgan. Episode 86, Dylan Fawcett Woodcraft. Gotten to know Dylan over the years, last couple of years. He was one of the first people I connected with on Instagram, and got chatting, and then he started a podcast, and I remember, what was that podcast called?
Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Wouldn't It Be Nice? And they just busy life and different things going on, and they had to stop doing it. They hope to do it again someday. But awesome guy, has been through the ringer and has a passion for people. He's a counselor full time, and has devoted his life to just helping people get better. And absolutely love him and his obedience to what God is doing.
Yeah, man. And the funny thing is before I was on this podcast with you, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to was the Wouldn't It Be Nice? I love Dylan's podcast. And I thought they did a fantastic job. And I was so disappointed when they decided to quit doing it. I was like, man, it was really good. But yeah, his obedience, and he talked about going to camp, and of course that's where he met his wife and everything. And now they've been in ministry, and now he's a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't know that I know the difference.
He's a counselor. He's a counselor.
But yeah, man, his passion for the Lord and his family, just awesome dude, man. And episode 87, our final guest of the year, Tyson Moore. Tyson Moore is also one of the people that we met and had dinner with at Workbench Con. And I had dinner with him, his wife, with Corin, and it was just, he's a genuine dude, like down to earth, on fire for the Lord, like no holes barred. I'm here for the ministry. And the guy is so talented, does music and everything at his church, teaches at a Christian school, has his YouTube and Instagram stuff that he does with, and does a lot of stuff with Home Depot. But man, just awesome, down to earth individual that I hope that we can somehow get him to Faith Talks Wood Retreat to lead worship. That is my prayer.
Absolutely. Tyson, one of my favorite people. We have, we've hit it off pretty good. He's a theology guy. And so him and I have chatted, and after the podcast recording, Tom had to run it. It was getting late, and you had something going on or whatnot, family or something. And Tyson and I stayed on for like another hour, just talking about church and about, technology and theology and all the stuff. And I absolutely love Tyson. He is genuine. And if you listen to that episode 87, you'll hear kind of the story from my perspective. But I was walking around Workbench Con. I don't remember, Tom was doing something. I'm just walking around the vendors, and I go sit at this table with there's a couple guys there, and the other guys get up and leave, and it's just Tyson and I didn't know who he was. And we just start talking, and 3 hours later, we learned about everything about each other, and started talking deep theology about all stuff. I mean, it was just incredible. And yeah, we ended up doing dinner, and one of the things that that's really cool about him is he's kind of an OG in this space, in like the Instagram influencer space. Went to the first Workbench Con, has been to like all of them. But he doesn't go there for the classes. He goes there to minister. He goes there to be a light. And I remember sitting there at dinner at the hotel conference area, really nice restaurant kind of place, and a very well-known content creator comes up to Tyson and just says, "Hey, I'm going through some stuff. Can you pray for me?" And I just remember that, like, I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, this person, I know who this, I've been watching them I know who they are. And they came up to Tyson and said, "Hey, I need some prayer." And we prayed with them right there. Like, I just one of the most genuine, down to earth guys. That's serious. He's going back to school for his theology degree, and just awesome guy.
And dude, he knows the Word of God inside and out. Like, oh my gosh, his knowledge of the Bible is just, I'm in awe of it. That's how I want to be. But I'm a few decades behind. Can't catch up. But,
well, here's what we want to say. We have 29 guests we just went through, a little snippet of each one of those episodes. If you haven't, go back and listen to some of those. If you missed them, we want to thank all the guests that have come on. They've been vulnerable to come on the podcast and share their testimony and how God has used them through the thick and the thin. And as we talked about some of the stats earlier and talked about all the listeners and all the stuff and all the countries, all of this is to spread the gospel through people's testimony. In all these countries and all of the people that listen, that's our goal, and that's what we want to do. And so thank you to all the guests that have been on this year. It's been a wild year as we saw the podcast grow, and now we have a sponsor, and there's just so much stuff coming down the pipeline. Really, really excited about.
Yeah, man. And I already got, I'm working on March now, so we've already got some great guests booked. We're going to try to stick to the every other week schedule this coming year, and teach one week and then guests the next week and back and forth. But got some great guests. I'm excited about who we've got coming on in January and February. But I want to say thank you to all of you listening, because without anybody listening, it wouldn't matter if we had a guest on or not. And the fact that this many people tune in each week and take time out of their schedule to listen to the podcast. And for those of you that have sent us messages encouraging us, I want to say thank you, because those messages, it does take a lot of time out of our schedule to do this. And there's times where, man, you're getting tired. You know, Will's got kids. I've got a business. He's got a business. And, you know, you start thinking, man, am I doing the right thing? And it's always at that time where I'm exhausted and thinking, man, is this a good use of my time? And I'll get a message from somebody saying, thank you for putting on the podcast. Thank you for and it's a boost of energy. So thank you for that, and continue to do that, and continue to listen and tell other people about the podcast.
Absolutely. So here's to 2024 and into 2025. And we hope and pray that this podcast continues to be used by God, and is a vessel and a way for people to hear the gospel and enjoy some shop talk. And so with that being said, Happy New Year to everybody. And until next week, I'm Will from Flatwood Works.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.